Right, guys, wonderful day outside today. So we got the garage door open and we're enjoying the weather. So turbos are on. Talked about this in the last video. So now I'm going to start working on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the accessory drive on and stuff so I can see exactly where things going to be, where things need to be. Woo! I'm going to order a radiator. I kind of spaced ordering a radiator, so I got to do that. I'm going to get some measurements. And undecided if I want to use the car or the truck intake. But I'm going to start with getting the accessories and stuff on so I know where to put the downpipes. And I did get the wastegates today, so I'm going to put those on and probably start working on the cold side. Let's do it. I already did test fit the truck accessory portion with the power steering and alternator on it, so I want to keep the alternator in that bracket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the idler off, and then I'm going to cut the whole power steering section off because I don't want power steering. It has a manual rack, but it's kind of a common mod to cut the idler off to run a car intake. So I think that's what I'm going to do, is chop the whole thing. So I'm going to cut this section off right here, get rid of the idler, and then I'm going to cut this whole bottom section off, and then I should be able to just run the belt underneath water pump over the alternator pulley and then straight back down. Alright, let's go. You're gonna go right-handed, right? Can I help you? I'm just gonna help you, okay? I want you to use a brace hand. Brace hand. Means put this down, put your hand down on here. I'm gonna stick your thumb up. Like this. Okay? So then we're going to do a brace hand, okay? Alright. Squeeze it. Squeeze it. Good. Keep going. Yeah? See how well you did? You want to do it by yourself now? Okay. So do the same thing. You see how we made little circles? You show how we made little circles? Let's go really slow. Slow. Go really slow. How does that look? Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now just keep trying to move down over to this spot and then fill in those cracks. Okay? Right in that joint. Get like right down in here. And then just keep going. Fill that whole thing in. Go slow. Go slow. You're okay. Just go slow. Okay guys, welcome back. So got some stuff done today already and gonna do some more tonight. It's about 8 p.m. so I'll probably stay up for another 4 or 5 hours working on this car. And let's see what I got done so far. So I think where we left off before, I didn't have these finish welded yet, so I got those done. And I just kind of TIGged these with no filler. So the little dimples in there are just, I was just using the foot pedal and kind of pulsing just to kind of mess around and see how that turned out. So no filler on these except for where there was some gaps, but it turned out okay. So those are done. Downpipes are finished. I didn't do the O2 sensor bungs yet, so I guess they're technically not completely done, but I do have the cold side piping done, or not to the intake, but from the turbos to the intercooler. So it's pretty much down. And that one's not connected yet. I got to cut a little bit of that section off. But this one is done and actually connected. So that works. These were a little tricky. I just had some 3-inch 90-degree couplers and I stretched it over the GT45 3¼ inch outlet there. So that was a little bit tricky. That was kind of tough to do that. But I was able to stretch the 3" over the 3¼ That's what I've been finding, is you can get a 1/4 inch of stretch out of these just by hand, and it seems like it's okay. If you look way down there, I did TIG weld the 3" pipe onto the 2½ inch inlet there. So I did that on both sides, just because that's what I felt like doing, instead of trying to get an adapter, like a different size reducer coupler or whatever, to go to the 2½ inch. I just welded some 3½ inch or 3" pipe on there, and that seems like it's doing just fine. So this radiator, look at the radiator, guys. I have a radiator in here. So I said I needed to buy a radiator. So a guy I work with races UTVs, or those little like 2-seater 4-wheeler things, side-by-sides, whatever you want to call them. So he races those regularly. It's becoming a pretty big thing now. And he races those, and he bought this for his UTV, and I don't know what it's from. It's like a 60-something Mustang, he said. But he bought this and then just had it sitting around as like a spare or something. And I was just talking about the Mustang when we were shooting the breeze at work the other day, and I'm like, oh, I gotta go buy a radiator tonight. And he's like, oh, I have one. I'm like, well, what kind is it? So he sent it to me, sent me a link, and I'm like, hey, I want it. So how much do you want for it? And he said $100. So there it is. It's in the car, and it fits pretty nicely. I don't know if I'm gonna keep it in front of the bar or behind the bar. I think I might just keep it just like that. Put a fan on it and call it good. So that's all working pretty slick. I just got to finish up the top intercooler pipe to the intake, and man, we should be pretty good. I'm going to finish that up, get it kind of close to where it needs to go to the intake, and then I'm going to pull the engine out and probably do the cam and springs. So it's actually next day now. I spent quite a bit of time last night adding some other stuff. So I did add the pie cuts all the way around here. This whole section was just out of the scrap pile. And I just was using that for a practice piece. I think that was like the first pie cut piece that I ever tried to do, and then I just didn't like it, so I had it in the scrap pile. Pulled that out, added a couple other pieces, and I extended this section here because I didn't want to put a coupler there because the exhaust is there. So I just cut it and then extended it out a little bit longer. But the whole cold side is done now. I just have to figure out a blow-off valve situation. Depending on how the bumper fits, I might actually just put the blow-off valve right here on the intercooler. So that would be kind of cool, tucked away down there, but it would be easy to stick it anywhere on here too, or just not run one. But I am planning on running probably 10 or more pounds of boost on this thing, so I'll probably put a blow-off valve on. Otherwise, I start blowing couplers at like 12 pounds. That's what I've seen in the past anyways. So now I want to start pulling this stuff back out because this is pretty much mocked up. I think I'm going to get some flat stock like this. I'm going to cut these off because I'm not going to use that also. But I'm going to get some flat stock for a radiator mount, and then I'm basically just going to come right off of this front bar straight across and then angle the piece down to that bracket down there and weld it on, so I have a nice little hard mounted bracket to mount the radiator to. Probably just do it like that. And yeah, I'm gonna stop out at a Hunter's shop today, and he's gonna let me borrow his torque converter. I'm not gonna buy one yet. He just has that one that he's not using, so I figured might as well use that, and then I'll decide on a converter later. So I'm going to start ripping all this stuff out and probably do cam and springs and then go out and get that converter. Alright guys, so skipped ahead a few steps, got everything taken apart, and see how sludgy this thing is. It's nice and clean, like dirty clean, but I did see an issue with the retainer plate. So the cam retainer plate is kind of peeled up, and this thing just kind of fell right off. So I'm gonna have to get a new one of these. It's a little unfortunate, but usually these things are pretty smashed and flat anyways. So I am going to replace this. This is what keeps the oil in. If this gasket is not in there, it's not going to keep the oil in the correct passage. It'll bleed off. You'll have low pressure. So I'm gonna do that. I did get the cam out already. Cam looks perfect. Everything looks fine. No issues there. So I'm gonna go ahead and throw the other cam in. So I'm gonna put the cam in now. This is the BTR Stage 3 Twin Turbo Cam. And I'm just gonna use some Lucas Oil Assembly Lube and kind of wrap it all over the place. We'll do that. I did make a post on my A21 Bravo Facebook page for the channel asking what cam you guys think I went with. And it was kind of a little contest. I said I would give you guys a like with my right index finger if you were correct. And there was a couple people that got it right. So I'll toss it in there. Throw some more on. I'm almost done with this bottle. I've had this bottle for probably 5 years. Maybe that means I need to do more engine assembly. But we're getting her done. This didn't come with any lube though. Usually it comes with like that graphite grease or whatever the hell you want to call it. That gray shit that gets in your oil for like 8 months. Doesn't want to come out. So just use 2 hands and then get it like that. Be a little sneaky. You can use a tool. A lot of times I've been able to get them without even using the tool. Yeah, so there, I didn't even use the screwdriver that I had in there, so that should be just fine. I'll start to put it all back together and then do the springs. Alright, so I know I've done a video on this already, but I'll just kind of run through it real quick. Just gonna bop them. Did that one already. I already did these, but we'll do it again. I'm gonna take the big impact and drive this down. I usually use the big impact so it doesn't actually do the impacting action when it's sucking this down. Just so it doesn't strip the threads and stuff on here. Just gonna use a magnet, pull the keepers out. And I did realize now that I forgot to switch the airline. You can tell because of the valve drop down. Not a big deal. I'll just take the valve and push the valve up. See, now they'll spin. It actually just spun the crank now once it got some compression in there. Kind of funny. So take this back out. So I can take out the springs. This engine does have aftermarket valve stem seals in it already. So it has like a 2-piece unit instead of the factory 1-piece. Oh, that one's tough to get off. There's a little base. Pull the base off. Put the new base on. Put the stem seal on. New ones. And I'll use a little, it's like a 10mm socket. Make sure that thing's on there. Seated all the way down. I can take the springs, drop it on the ground, pull it off so you know it's good. Got the little retainers on the top. I'll try to do this the best I can without popping the valves in. The other thing I want to do is just make sure that the thing is centered so I can actually get the keepers in right away. If they're off center, they're really hard to get in there, and then they'll keep wanting to pop out. So take 4 of the little keeper clips. And what I'll try to do is hold one with like a thumb and a ring finger, and then an index and my middle finger. I'll try to pop this thing off. There we go. That wasn't so bad. Not as bad as the other one that I lost the thing for 25 minutes. Popped out, fell on the ground. Alright guys, I got the cam and springs, that's all done. Everything's put back together, got it flipped over now. I'm putting the Holley oil pan on. So the pan calls for cutting out the windage tray because it's so tight up to the front. So I actually had to modify this a little bit. You can see on the back side I cut it off. This is an already modified windage tray because in the 350Z originally, when I had this motor in there, when I had the oil pan that I made on there, this is the old oil pan that I built that has a front sump on there. So if you missed that one, I just took a truck flange and then cut all the metal and then welded it up out of aluminum. So that pan on the back of the motor was so tight that I had to cut the windage tray, which was this section here. But the F-body windage trays are kind of missing, so you're kind of replicating that. So what I did, this section was pushed forward with it cut off, so I moved it all back so it was missing the front and then did the Holley modifications. So the holes didn't really line up perfectly, but making it work on this one, long story short. So that's all set up now. Here is the new pan ready to go on. Like this thing because it has the bungs already ready to go on the outside. It's a 1/2 inch NPT, so I got some 1/2 inch NPT to 10 AN fittings there. So no modifications to the pan, just gonna flip it over, bolt it on. And then we're ready to throw the motor in the car. But like I said, I'm going to get the converter from Hunter. I was going to do that today, but it got a little bit late, so I just decided to stay here. So I'm going to go pick that thing up probably early tomorrow, as early as I can, and start working on getting everything back together. So basically just put flex plate and converter back on, hook up the transmission, and my 2-year-old was riding on this thing, and he was using the dipstick like a shifter, and created a big spill there. So that's kind of funny. He was having fun. What I like about this car so far, when I took this whole thing apart, everything just came apart in like 6 pieces. So we got 1 with the piping, 2 with the piping, including the manifolds, the intake with the big snout on it, and then all this junk all comes off in one piece. So it'll literally be, if I wanted to take the whole front end and like intercooler off with the turbos, it'll be 12 bolts. The turbo flange bolts, and then the intercooler, and then the whole thing should just come right out. So that's nice. I also did get this thing. Kevin, the username is the Kevman 011, I believe it is. And he sent me this thing. So I was struggling kind of with my other load leveler that I have. I do have a different one, but it's like a lot bigger and bulkier. And I was hitting the firewall and doing all this stuff. So this thing just showed up at my house one day. And I appreciate that because it works perfectly to get this thing in there. So thanks, Kevin. That's pretty awesome. And I don't know what else to say, guys. I think I'm just going to go through and, you know, finish priming all this. I might not paint it yet because I'll probably paint it a little bit better over winter. Get this thing all thrown in there. BTR Stage 3 twin turbo cam with the BTR 660 lift springs. So hopefully that thing will move a little bit of air and help me spool those turbos a little bit better. I think that's where I'm at for today. And I'm dirty, I'm tired. I'm gonna go in and eat, go to bed.